You know, every so often, an idea comes along that doesn't just add to a field, it completely rewrites the rules. That's exactly what we're talking about today. We're diving into the work of John Nash and a concept so powerful it totally remade the blueprint for modern economics, the Nash equilibrium. But before we get into the heavy stuff, let me ask you something. Just think about your day. When you're driving in traffic, negotiating a project at work, or even just picking a restaurant with friends, how often is your best choice totally dependent on what you think someone else is going to do? Yeah, pretty often, right? Well, hang on to that thought because it is the absolute core of what we're about to unpack. All right, so to really appreciate just how massive Nash's idea was, we have to kind of take a step back in time. We need to look at what economics looked like before he came along. And honestly, it was a world of what you could call anonymous markets. The old view, well, it was elegant, I'll give it that. It basically said that you, me, every company out there, we were all just price takers, like tiny little fish in a giant ocean. We were too small to make any waves or influence the market price. And equilibrium, that was just this beautiful, simple point where supply met demand. But there was a huge blind spot. What happens when the fish aren't so small? What if there's sharks circling each other? What happens when we're actually strategic, when we're trying to outguess each other's moves? All of a sudden, that simple supply and demand model just doesn't cut it anymore. And this is the moment everything changes. This is the intellectual rupture we're talking about. A brilliant young mathematician, John Nash, steps onto the stage and gives us the very tool we needed to answer that massive, game-changing question. Now, to be fair, he wasn't starting from scratch. Back in 1944, a couple of guys named von Neumann and Morgenstern really laid the groundwork with game theory. But then, just 6 years later, Nash comes along, and in his PhD thesis, which by the way was only 27 pages long, he introduces this absolutely revolutionary idea for what are called non-cooperative games. Situations where we can't just shake hands and make a deal. And this idea was so powerful, so fundamental, that it took a while for the world to catch up. But it did. In 1994, more than 40 years later, it won him the Nobel Prize. And this right here, this quote captures the whole revolution in a nutshell. Seriously, if you take away just one thing, let it be this. Nash completely flipped the script on what equilibrium even means. It stopped being about some invisible hand of the market. Instead, it became about you and me making the smartest move we can based on what we think everyone else is doing. It's all about mutual best responses. That's the magic phrase. Okay, so we've been throwing this term around. What in the world is a Nash equilibrium? Let's break it down. It's actually a pretty elegant idea when you get to the heart of it. So here's the textbook definition. A Nash equilibrium is a situation where every single player in the game has chosen their best possible strategy, given the strategies chosen by all the other players. The key thing to focus on is that no one, not a single person, can do better by changing their move all by themselves. That word unilaterally is crucial. It means you can't improve your situation by making a different choice alone. You can think of it like a logical flow, a three-step dance, really. First, everybody picks their move. Then, what you get out of it, your payoff, depends not just on your choice, but on what everybody else chose, too. And finally, the music stops, and you're in equilibrium when every single person can look around and say, you know what? Given what they all did, I couldn't have made a better move. There are no regrets. No, darn, I should have done something else. Okay, theory is great, but let's make this real. The most famous example is the prisoner's dilemma. Imagine you and your partner in crime get caught. The police put you in separate rooms and you can't talk to each other. Here's the deal they offer you. You can either stay quiet or you can betray your partner. Now, look at the payoffs and think of these numbers as years in jail, so lower is better. If you both stay quiet, you both get just 1 year. Not bad. But if you betray your partner while they stay quiet, you walk away free and they get slammed with 4 years. The reverse is also true. But here's the kicker. If you both betray each other, you both get 2 years. So, what do? Well, the Nash equilibrium is for both of you to betray. And here's why. Let's think it through from your perspective. What if your partner betrays you? Well, your best move is to betray them right back, to get 2 years instead of 4. Okay, but what if your partner stays quiet? Well, your best move is still to betray them, because then you get 0 years instead of 1. See? No matter what your partner does, your personal best interest is to betray. And since they're in the other room thinking the exact same thing, you both end up betraying. You get locked into that outcome, even though you both would have been better off if you just kept your mouths shut. That's the power, and sometimes the tragedy, of a Nash equilibrium. But here's the thing. This idea was way too big to just be about a hypothetical game. Its impact just exploded, spreading everywhere. It fundamentally shifted how we look at the world, away from those old anonymous markets and towards head-to-head strategy. And this is really the key takeaway. Nash didn't just solve one little puzzle. What he did was hand a universal toolkit to, well, to everyone. Economists, political scientists, even evolutionary biologists. It was a brand new way to analyze basically any situation where your outcome is tied to what someone else does and you're both trying to guess each other's moves. I mean, just look at this list. It's staggering. We're talking about everything from how big companies like Coke and Pepsi set their prices to high-stakes bargaining between unions and companies. It helps us understand auctions, voting, and even terrifying things like international arms races. All of these incredibly different, messy human interactions, suddenly, they could all be analyzed with the same set of tools. It's like Nash gave us a whole new language to talk about our strategic world. So when you look at the big picture, the legacy here is just immense. It's not an exaggeration to say it was a complete redrawing of the entire economic blueprint. And it all comes back to this one fundamental shift. Before Nash, economic agents, people, companies, were seen as these passive little atoms just bouncing around in a market. But after Nash, no way. We started seeing them for what they are: intelligent, strategic players on a chessboard, always thinking 3 moves ahead, always asking, if I do this, what will they do? Economics as a field had to mature to deal with this much more complex and, frankly, much more realistic view of the world. And hey, don't just take it from me. Listen to Robert Aumann, another Nobel Prize winner in the field. He basically said that the Nash equilibrium isn't just a tool in the toolbox, it is the tool. It is, without a doubt, the single most used concept from game theory in all of economics. That is an absolutely incredible legacy for a 27-page paper. So, I'll leave you with a challenge. Now that you've got this idea in your head, this stable point built on everyone making their best move, where do you see it playing out in your own world? Think about it. Is it the 2 gas stations on opposite corners always matching each other's prices? Is it you and your roommates deciding who does the dishes? Once you start looking for it, you'll be amazed. You'll start to see these little strategic games, these hidden equilibria, absolutely everywhere.